Action!
Okay, right, quick walkthrough. This is a very quick walkthrough of the stuff that we've got. So if you'd like to have a look at this table, you'll get a sense of the various bits and pieces we've got. This is the core equipment. We've got all sorts of other lights and green screens and everything, but the core equipment is what we're looking at here. So if we start, we'll work down the table. This end, we've got the optics, basically. So you'll notice we've got two Canon cameras. I'm breaking the law right now because I've got two Canon cameras without caps on. We should never do that, but for the purposes of this demonstration I thought it was okay. So we've got two Canon EOS 60Ds. These are not only perfect for photos but also perfect for video. We've got a flash gun for use when we're taking photos, and we've got some little lights, little bunny lights as we affectionately like to call them. Little LED lights, a little bit of fill-in light. They're not massive, they're not going to give you enough light if you're in really poor light conditions, but good for removing shadows. And then we've got lenses. We've got three lenses. We've got a 50mm lens. This has got a 1.8 aperture, which means you can really control depth of field. So you can have very little in focus, you can throw the background, make it totally blurry, really focus on the subject, but it doesn't have any form of zoom, so it's very restricted, but very fantastic for certain conditions. The main lens we should be using is this one. This is a zoom lens. Again, not a massive zoom lens, but it's got a big aperture, an f2.8, which again allows us to really control depth of field, but we also have a zoom, so it gives us more flexibility. So if you're going to interview someone, in fact pretty much anything we do we should use this lens, because if you get into a room that proves to be too small and you can't zoom out with that one, you're in real trouble. This is why this one's the best lens to use generally. But if you really need a lot of control over depth of field, the f1.8 is even better. And then we've got another lens. This is just a 17 to 85mm zoom lens. It's got a bit longer range, so it's better if you really need to zoom in that little bit further, but frankly it's not going to give you that much more. So this is really just a backup lens or a secondary lens if you're filming with two cameras. So that's the cameras and lenses. Now on to, actually the one thing I'll mention is we've got this funny little device. This clips onto the back of the camera. Clips onto the horseshoe. You'll notice there's another horseshoe to put stuff on top. The point of it is, if you're filming outdoors and you try and focus or zoom in with these screens when the sun's out, you'll not see anything at all. You'll have no control, no idea at all of what you're filming. Put that on the back, eye up against it, it blocks out all the ambient light. You're now focused on the screen as if it was a viewfinder, so it gives you that ability to really focus when you're shooting outdoors. So that's what that's for. Also, if you want to make these cameras, you bolt all these bits together, it ends up looking quite an impressive beast, so that's also good for showing off. Camera frame. Camera with a lens sits on the frame and it gives you more stability. The point of this, you film with these little cameras, they wobble all over the place. Put it in one of these frames, you've got more points of contact, you can really hold it steady and move around much more smoothly with it. We do have, not on the table here, a Steadicam, very difficult to use, but if we master it, absolutely smooth flowing motion images if we can master it. So that's it in terms of the optics. It's important to keep these lenses on at all times, unlike what I'm doing right now, but they just clip onto the front and there's a button here to release them anti-clockwise to remove them. Okay, moving over to the audio side, the mic side. Boom mic, extends out to about 3 meters, I think. Perfect if you're filming multiple people and you need to move the mic between one person and another, or if you're shooting from a distance and you need to be able to get that the environment in as well. But of course you don't want to see someone in shot with a microphone, so you can stand right out of the way, out of shot, but the mic can still pick up the signal. You clearly need two people generally. You can get a camera set up and then leave it with the mic. Bit dodgy, because these cameras do, for unknown reasons, randomly just stop recording. So you really need to be stood behind the camera at all times, watching that it's recording. Don't know why they do it. A little bit of a feature of digital SLRs when they're shooting videos, they're a bit unpredictable. Generally, you know, they might do that once or twice at the beginning, so it's worth having a little bit of a roll at the beginning, and then you should be fine. So we've got two microphone cables, 5 metre and a really short one. Quick note on the cable, we never roll an audio cable up like this. They're very sensitive, so we have to be careful not to twist them as we're wrapping it up. Well, this is clearly the cable you would use if you were using the boom mic, but also the shotgun handle. So you might just have the mic, so this is the mic here, it goes into the shotgun handle like so, and you might be talking to somebody and just holding the mic up to capture their voice. If it's fine for you, a bit like an interview situation, camera's looking over your shoulder, it can see you, you're talking, asking a question, moving it back to the responder, the interviewee, to hear their response. So you might use it like that. So that brings me on to the mic. Very, very sensitive. It's a shotgun mic, directional mic, so it will only pick up what it's pointing at. Generally it will pick up a little bit of ambient noise, but generally it will only record what it's looking at. You've got two heads. It's important to always have a head, partly for protection, partly for wind. But even indoors, we use the indoor head. Outdoors, we always use the fluffy. And the fluffy basically just stops the noise of the wind being picked up on the microphone. Very important. So how do we use the mic? We can use the mic as I've already shown with the shotgun handle, but also we can use the mic, if we're going to use this pole, we put the shotgun handle on the end of the pole and the mic in the end of the shotgun handle. The reason we do that rather than using a standard mic holder is this is rubberized. Any vibration or any knocks that we put through the pole or through the handle don't get picked up because it's rubber, it just absorbs into the rubber. If we're going to film on camera, if we're just doing a one kind of, you know, a single headshot to camera, we don't need to use the boom, we just use the little on-camera stabilizer, and again that's rubberized so any movement doesn't get picked up, and that will quite simply bolt, if I put it the right way around, on top of the camera, on top of the horseshoe. We've got a small cable, if we're using the camera on top of the mic on top of the camera. We don't want a 5 metre cable traipsing all over the place for the fun of it, hence we use a short cable. And then that brings me on to how you actually connect it, because if you look at the camera, what you will not find is a big XLR microphone input. It would be slightly funny on these little cameras to have a massive, great big input. What you actually have is a 3.5mm, like a headphone socket basically, 3.5mm microphone input. So in order to use a mic on here, you either have a cable which converts the XLR on the back of the mic to a 3.5mm jack, which is just rubbish because they're forever breaking and it's a big weighty cable hanging on this little socket. So what we have instead is a microphone input box. So the microphone goes into the box, that goes into the microphone. There's a little cable out here that plugs into the camera. On the back of this box you've got all sorts of knobs and buttons. We'll do something a little bit more detail on this in a minute. We need to be very, very careful though. To the very least we need to be careful that they all say mic. Everything needs to say mic. If it says line, it's looking for a different input, which is called auxiliary on here, and it won't pick up any sound at all. So that has to say mic. If you want to do a little close-up, actually, I'll do a quick overview of what's on here. You've got a little wheel that just simply is the wheel to control the little bolt on the bottom, and that's how we connect it to the camera. So we've got the tripod input on the camera. We simply align that with our little bolt, and we turn the wheel to connect it. And we have it so the screen of the camera at the back where we're going to be looking is aligned with the back of the box. We take this lead out and need to make sure it's from the mic out and not from the aux, because again that's not going to pick up the signal. Mic out into the line, the mic in. It says mic underneath it, and that goes in. and that goes into the mic. There's no buttons on the mic, nothing on the mic at all. There is a battery in the mic, so if we find that we're not picking up any signal, it might be because the battery in here needs changing. Just a little AA battery might need changing. There's a little switch on here, don't need to worry about that. So we've got the box plugged in onto the camera, we've got the cable in. Of course we need to make sure it's powered on, blue screen. Now what you're never going to see, unfortunately, and rather you know, for me certainly it's not easy because you don't get any confirmation. It's actually picking up audio. You don't see very much or any activity on this screen. It baffles me, I don't know why, but that's normal. So what you can do is plug a pair of headphones in to make sure that you're hearing something through the mic, because if the mic's battery's dead, for example, and you plug a pair of headphones in and you can't hear anything, you know there's a problem you need to investigate. You also know to investigate whether these are all on mic. The only other button you really need to worry about is where it says M and S, mono or stereo. If you have it on stereo, because we tend to only connect one microphone into the right or left channel, doesn't matter, you will only pick up audio on one channel, so the left speaker or the right speaker. Now in the editing package in Premiere you can just duplicate it over, that's fine, but why give yourself an extra task when you can just make sure that's on M for mono, and whatever you pick up on either channel now will just be transferred to both channels. So they have to be on mic, that has to be on M, and that has to be powered on. Everything else you don't need to worry about in terms of buttons and knobs. Just make sure everything's turned up to full, and that's essentially how we use that. Okay, so the box always when we're using the microphone always sits on top underneath the camera, and then we have a choice now of how we're going to shoot. If we're going to use the tripod, we can attach the tripod, simply remove it, and we can attach it to the tripod connector on the bottom. Just screw that on, and then that will nicely clip onto the tripod, of course. And we've now got a camera mounted with the audio box ready to rock. So if I was going to do a simple interview, I would simply attach now my microphone foot, or whatever you call it. And I then put the microphone in there, nicely making sure it's in the middle so there's no contact if it gets moved with the frame, because that will make a very loud and pleasant noise in the film, in the recording. And then I'd always put this sponge head on if indoors, which means if I do bash it, it's got a bit of protection. Basically, it doesn't really perform a massive function indoors. Take my little cable, going to plug it in the sides, of course, and then I'm just going to plug it into the back of the microphone. That's it. Okay, now I'm ready to go. I'm not going to use this lens, so I'm going to press this button and twist it anti-clockwise, and the lens comes off. And I'm going to put on the standard lens. This is the 17 to 55 millimeter, and it says there's a 2.8 there. That means f2.8, which means it's got this nice wide aperture for getting good depth of field. I'm going to align the white square up. That's the white square here, and just twist it clockwise, and on it goes. So that's it. I'm now essentially ready to film. So we'll quickly look at some of the settings on the camera itself.
Could we just